There was a time in my life where I thought my testimony was pretty boring. Because growing up in a Christian home and getting the opportunity and the chance to see many, many people give their testimony about how God saved them from, they used to be an armed robber, or they used to be into prostitution, or they used to be a drug addict, or a street bum, or, they used to be a murderer, or they spent so many years in prison, and just all these dramatic testimonies of what God saved people from. And I was like, well, God didn't save me from anything like that. I don't have a really great testimony to give. And the Lord stopped and He said, listen. He said, your testimony is just as miraculous as their testimony.
Amen.
Because I saved them from all this stuff, while at the same time I kept you from all those things.
Right. Amen.
I didn't have to suffer the heartache of breaking and entering in places, and I've never done any street drugs. I've never smoked one cigarette, and I'm not saying that to brag. So please don't get me wrong. I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just praising God because He kept me from those things.
Yes.
I didn't have to experience the heartache of premarital sex, or the heartache of getting an STD, or any of those kind of things.
Right.
So, for a long time I thought, well, my testimony's not that great. And the Lord said, no, wait. Yours is just as great because I kept you from those very things that these people had to go through.
Right.
So, needless to say, I was raised in a Christian home. That's some of my earliest memories, being in church. Now, even my mom tells stories that I don't even remember. One time there was this revivalist who came through, and we were having revival, and I was still on the bottle. And I imagine I was probably still in diapers. And I'm laying there in the pew, just sucking away on my bottle, and the preacher's just a preaching, and he's hacking, and he's, you know how they used to preach like that?
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's just going on. And my mom said I got up and had my bottle hanging out of my mouth, and I went, whoa! Like that, and milk was just spewing out. And another time, I guess I was a little older, and I don't remember this either, but she said we were driving down the road, and all of a sudden I jumped out of the back seat and put my head between the two seats, and I said, stop! Listen! Mama, do you hear? Angels singing. Jesus is coming soon. And I tell you, my mom said that sent a cold chill down her spine. But I knew from an early age that the Lord had His hand over my life. And the first pastor we had was Pastor Freddie Dutton, and he had a son that was about a year older than me. His name also was Chris. So there were two Chris's in the church, and we were like, like Forrest Gump says, we're like peas and carrots. We were peanut butter and jelly. We're always together. But he was like twice as big as me. So he was known as Big Chris, and I was known as Little Chris. And I'll never forget the night. I was about 6 years old. And it was at the end of the service. The altar call was given, and both Chris and I, we looked at each other. We kind of nodded. We knew what we were both thinking. We both went up to the altar, and together as best friends, we gave our heart to the Lord at 6 years of age.
Amen.
And so I don't exactly remember the date. I don't have it written down. I don't remember all. I just remember I was 6 years old. And I remember I did get baptized in the wintertime. But we had a baptistry. And they thought they had it all set up and everything was all fine and dandy, but the heating element went out. I was wearing, I still remember what I was wearing. I was wearing blue corduroys and, a red, white, and blue sweater with snowflakes on it. And I got into that water and I was like, and I lost my breath getting into the water. And everybody laughed and everything. So I'll never forget my baptism. So I was saved at 6 years old, and of course I don't know, maybe everybody, maybe somebody was spared of this, but everybody seems to go through a little rebellious stage in their life. And so between the ages of 10 and 13, I backslid, and I went through that little rebellious stage. And another friend of mine that I went to church with, he ended up getting saved during that time, and I just felt so left out. I felt like I lost my I did lose my best friend. I lost my best friend to Jesus. And I was jealous of that because I didn't have what he had. So I still remember, and I still regret this, I still remember trying to convince him, not to be saved, to just kind of do what we were doing before and let it all, And I'll never forget, the example of his life caused me to really rethink mine.
Yes.
And I was struggling. You know, during that time when you're 13 years old, you want to be popular, you want to be cool, you want kids at school to accept you, you don't want to be the oddball, you don't want people to make fun of you. So it was like I was flip-flopping every day.
Yeah.
And what does James say? It says that a double-minded person, a double-minded man is unstable in all he does.
Yeah.
So one day I was going to school acting like I was the biggest, toughest hoodlum around, cussing and swearing and joking around with the rest of them. And the next day I was like the best Christian you'd ever see. And I was flip-flopping between two opinions.
Yes.
And I remember walking to, we had junior high. You call it middle school here, but we call it junior high.
Yeah.
And I remember walking to school, because we lived very close, and it was before school started, and I got to my homeroom, the lights were out in the hallway, and the door was locked to the homeroom. It was before the teachers or anybody got there, and the Lord just grabbed a hold of my heart, 13 years of age. And I sat down, had my back up against the wall next to the door, and I said, I just prayed. I said, Lord, I said, I'm tired. I'm sick of being a Christian one day and being a sinner the next. I'm sick of praising you one day and cussing up a storm like the rest of them the next. I'm tired of it, Lord. I don't want to do that anymore. I said, so I resolve right here, right now, I'm going to rededicate my heart and life to you. No matter what happens, I'm going to live for you the rest of my life. And right there in that dark hallway of the junior high school, I rededicated my heart and life to the Lord. And I was full tilt from then on out. I could not be persuaded to backslide or to do anything contrary. I was focused. And I got persecuted. I got made fun of. But it didn't dissuade me. It didn't bother me. I kept going. I remember going through school, and my mom somehow got a hold of these blank stickers, like name tag stickers. And I would write, Jesus loves you, and God rules, and scripture verses on them and stuff like that. And I would slide them in the little vents of the lockers. And so whenever somebody opened up their locker, all these stickers would come out talking about God and Jesus and everything. And I remember meeting my first Christian. And his name is Jason Baker, and it was study hall, and I saw him reading the Bible. I was like, wow, you're reading the Bible. I said, are you a Christian? He said, yeah, me too. We struck up a friendship there, and we were able to support each other. And so that was kind of junior high. And I've never been a cookie cutter Christian. I grew up in Ohio, and the majority of the churches in Ohio are deep Southern churches, because a lot of the families that founded these churches was from Kentucky and West Virginia. And the reason that these Southern churches moved north is because of jobs. The job market was really bad in the 60s and 70s in the South, and they were just booming up in the north with, appliance plants and car plants and manufacturers, and so jobs were aplenty back then. So a lot of men moved their families up to the north and settled there. So a lot of the churches had a very a Southern feel to them. So even though I'm a Yankee, I had a very Southern upbringing, because both my parents were, my dad was from West Virginia and my mom's from Kentucky. And so I thank the Lord that I was raised in a good, godly home, and some of my earliest memories were memories of church. But because I had that Southern upbringing and was in that Southern church, it was King James only. It was Southern gospel only. It was all these things, right? And so Southern gospel didn't do a blessed thing for me. I'm sorry. As I get older, I'm learning to appreciate Southern gospel music, and I'm actually liking it now. But as a teenager, didn't want nothing to do with it, didn't like it. So it was very controversial back then. Back then, it was the NIV that was coming out. Boy, that was controversial, because I was in a King James only church, right? And, Christian rock music was coming out at that time. Oh, that was really controversial, because we know that God is listening to Bill Gaither sitting on the throne, right? So those were the type of things that I kind of had to deal with. So, when I got to high school, I started getting into some of the Christian rock music and found some other friends that were into the Christian rock music. And so my church didn't like it too well. They started getting worried about me. And every time I'd go up to the altar to pray, they thought I was rededicating my life to the Lord. No, I just want to talk to God. I'm still saved. Don't worry. And I wore ripped jeans and T-shirts, and I was just your typical teenager, nonconformist, right? And it was funny, because my mom started worrying about the crowd that I was hanging around. because one of my friends had a mohawk. One of my friends had long hair, looked like John Lennon. But they were all Christians. They were all believers. And my friends would come over to the house, and so my mom would get to know them and everything. And at first she was afraid and kind of scared because they were different from what she understood and grew up with. And they weren't like the Christians that she was used to. But even today, my mom said, you and your friends taught me a great lesson. That not to judge people by what they look like on the outside, but to look at their heart.
Yes.
And, and she said, I can't believe that God had blessed you with such good friends because we always had each other's back. And the Lord gave us a ministry in high school.
Yes.
Back in the 80s, heavy metal music was a very popular thing. So that's who we felt led to reach, was our peers that was into the heavy metal rock music. So, we brought them the Christian stuff. We'd bring cassettes and CDs to school and Bibles to school. We would take these kids to Christian concerts, and we would have Bible studies. And, the Lord really used what we were doing there, even though it was different from what everybody else was doing, maybe even a little bit of ahead of its time. But as a young person, I've seen God move in my life in very miraculous ways, very, very powerful ways. I remember just because I was a Christian, I was persecuted and I got made fun of. And I've told this story before, and Al's heard this before, but this one guy wanted to beat me up. And he would make fun of me and tease me every single day. And one day, he caught me off of school grounds. And I'm sitting there skateboarding, ripped jeans and t-shirt, right? Skateboard, mind my own business. He come out of nowhere. I didn't even know where he came from. As soon as I turned around, he clocked me. Well, I didn't fight him. I grabbed my skateboard and ran home. And I thought, oh man, what did you just do? What are you doing? I said, yeah, they're going to make fun of me when I get to school because I ran away from a fight. They're going to call me a chicken and a coward. And so my mom saw, my face because it got hit. And she's like, oh, I'm going to call the school. I'm going to take care of it. I said, no, Mom, let me deal with it. Are you sure? Yes, I got this handled. So I knew exactly the way that it was going to play out. I was going to get off the bus at school, school, and of course his friends would be there to meet me. Sure enough, there they were, standing right there waiting for my bus to get there, and him and his friends, as soon as I stepped off the bus, he's a chicken, he's a wimp, and following me in. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do this. When you're young, you're foolhardy, right? But sometimes the Lord even protects you and blesses you in that foolhardiness. And so I turned around and said, Tony, I said, you want to fight? His eyes all lit up. Yeah, I want to fight. I said, fine. I threw my book bag down. He threw his book bag down. I took off my jacket, threw it down. He threw his down. He gets his fists up. He's ready to go. And all of a sudden, that circle that comes around when a fight, big circle. So he's sitting there and he's ready. And all of a sudden, I just come up to him and I go, got my finger, put it right in his face. I said, Tony, I don't care what you do to me. I don't care what you say to me. I love you, and Jesus Christ loves you. And he was like, and everybody got quiet, and I heard this black girl in the background saying, yeah, you tell him. And after that, the guy was my friend.
Yeah.
And I found him on Facebook this past year and discovered that he's a Christian now.
Amen.
So the Lord it was just so amazing, did such amazing things. And I had one of my dad's old army jackets, and I drew a picture of Jesus on the cross. And it wasn't this Renaissance Jesus on the cross. This was a blood and guts Jesus on the cross. His body was shredded. I tried to make it look as realistic as possible. I got made fun of every day because of that. Finally, I got sick and tired of it. I took the jacket off, and I said, here, you think you're such a big shot? You wear it. The guy jumped back like it had the Black Plague on it or something. And I said, look, you're making fun of me every day. I said, at least I have the guts and the backbone to wear this jacket. You won't even put this on. I said, who's the real chicken? Who's the real wimp now? At least I got the guts to wear this. And at the end of my high school career, some of the people that made fun of me signed my yearbook. And they said, you know what? I really respected, you stuck to your guns. I respected your stance, and you had more guts than I did. And so that really made me feel good.
Amen.
And so I went to Bible college back in 1991. And that's where we connect. Because that's where I met my wife, was at Bible college, and she's from this church.
Amen. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Pam Eccleston. I remember met her the very first day of our freshman year at Bible college. We had the same counselor that got our classes all together, and we struck up a conversation. And, as I was a nonconformist as a teenager, I was a nonconformist in Bible college too. I wasn't your suit and tie kind of guy, your cookie cutter Christian, but the rule said you had to wear dress pants, you had to wear a dress shirt, and you had to wear a tie.
Amen.
They didn't say they had to match. So I got 1970s polyester wide butterfly collared shirts and big old fat ties, and that's what I wore. And because I wanted to be different, I wanted to stand out.
You did.
So I did, and everybody thought I was weird, right? But I was really impressed with Pam because I wrote poetry at that time. And she was the only person that could read my poetry and know exactly what I was trying to say. So I was really impressed by that because I was very cryptic and very, symbolic and everything. And she knew that. So we were friends throughout our whole high school or college career. And we saw each other date other people and everything like that. And, I just remember one day I just said to myself, it's like, I really can't imagine my life without this person. So I remember one day I said, hey, let's just try dating. And if it doesn't work, we're still mature enough, we'll still be really good friends. So we were only dating 1 week, and I asked her to marry me. We were engaged for about a year after that, but we knew each other from day one of college, right? So, the Lord blessed me with a good wife, just as our brother said, behind every man is a good woman, and my wife is definitely a good woman. And so it was during that time that I actually started digging into my ancestry and family roots. My wife, she's adopted, and come to find out that her birth mother is Jewish, Russian Jewish, and started digging around in my family tree, discovered Jewish lineage on both my mom and dad's side. So the Lord just worked on us in such a way where we really felt led to explore Messianic Judaism. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, that's the Judaism that still believes that Jesus is the Messiah. They call him Yeshua. And so for 20 years, we practiced Messianic Judaism. A lot of people abandoned us during that time because they didn't understand what we were doing, where we were going.
Yes.
And you find out really who your friends are at that time. So we had a lot of people turn their back on us because they thought, oh, they're under the law, or oh, they're apostates, or they're of this other different religion, just because we weren't of the same denomination. So and during that time, I was able to study under 3 different rabbis and become a Messianic rabbi myself. And through that time, I was able to go on a lot of missions trips. There are 10 lost tribes of Israel in this world. And I believe with all my heart that it's prophecy that the Lord is going to bring these 10 tribes back. Because when Jesus comes, he's going to come for his full bride. He's not going to come for a quarter of the bride or half a bride, partial bride. He's going to come for the full bride. So I think as time goes on, we're going to discover who these lost tribes are. And a lot of these are going to be saved.
Yes.
So I got in touch with this man from Africa, gave me the Macedonian call. Come to Nigeria, minister to us. Come to find out they were the Igbo tribe. And the Igbo tribe is actually a portion of the lost tribe of Gad.
Okay.
Gad had 7 sons. 3 of his sons made it to Nigeria, Eri, Areli, and Arodi. And the royal family still has Eri as their last name. And so even missionaries, Anglican missionaries and other missionaries who started ministering to the Igbos way, way back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they suspected that they might be a lost tribe because they kept the Old Testament perfectly. Their culture was set up to where they followed all of the law, the dietary laws and all the cultural and customs. It's a little slightly different, but it's still lined up with Scripture. And so these Igbo people, the majority of them are Christians. The majority of them do believe in Jesus Christ, but they're going back to their Hebraic heritage. And I remember also during this time, I kind of felt aimless and lost. I didn't know where God was gonna take me. And when I went to Bible college, I knew God called me into full-time ministry. I just didn't know what that was. So I got my bachelor's in missions because I thought, you know what? Whatever God calls me to, missions would cover it all.
Yes.
I'd be qualified to preach. I'd be qualified to pastor. I'd be qualified to go overseas. Whatever. Even if I stayed at home, I'd be qualified because missions covers all the bases.
Yes.
But I got to use my mission degree by going to Africa and other places like this. But one day I just woke up and I just felt so lost and so aimless. And this was when my dad was still living. And God said, call your father. And we were never extremely close. But after I got married, we started getting closer because we could relate a little bit more. So I said, Dad, I need to talk to you. He says, well, he heard the way my voice was. And he says, well, what's wrong, son? I said, I just don't know what to do. I just totally feel lost and aimless. I just don't know what direction I should go in. And Dad got really, really quiet. I said, Dad, are you still there? He said, yes, son. He said, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anybody before. I said, what's that? I feel like I missed my calling. What do you mean? I feel like God called me to preach and I never fulfilled that calling. But you know what? In a way he did. Because my dad was a Sunday school superintendent for years. He always had a little devotional before he dismissed the adults and the kids to their Sunday school classes. Yes. He was at the hospital when somebody was sick. He made phone calls. He went on visitation. He was at every funeral. He did everything a pastor did. He just didn't have the credentials that said that he was a pastor. Amen. I said, Dad, you fulfilled it. Amen. Just maybe not in the traditional way. And that was God kind of saying to me that the baton was being passed from my father to me. Amen. And once I started going through my genealogy, I discovered that on my dad's side, there was a lot of Mennonite and Quaker ministers. And I was just kind of amazed that I was kind of in that line. Amen. You know, that continuing line where the baton was being passed from one minister to another. And so I have a rich history of ministers going all the way back. So I've been your unorthodox Christian. I've been your unorthodox minister. I haven't fit the mold or the description of what most people believe or think of or see as a Christian. I always try to push the envelope, be a little bit different. But the verse that God gave to me during those years was the Apostle Paul. He said, I become all things to all men that I might save some. Yes. To the Greek I become a Greek. To the Jew I become a Jew. In other words, he got down on their level, he understood them culturally and reached out to them in a culturally acceptable way so that they could understand the gospel. Doesn't mean that he compromised his standards. Right. Doesn't mean he compromised the word of God. But he just got down on their cultural and intellectual level. And I discovered that's what I was doing when I was ministering to the headbangers in high school. And that's what I was doing when I was ministering to the Igbos in Africa. Yes. So now it's kind of like God has taken me full circle. Yeah. If you would have told me a year ago that I would be pastoring a church down the road, I would have laughed in your face and said, you are crazy. Because, I don't know how many people here believe in the fivefold ministry of apostle, prophet, pastor, teacher, evangelist, but if your fingers represent the fivefold ministry, I always believed my pastoral gift was as big as my thumb. It was the littlest gift. So I said, I'm never going to be a pastor. And God was like, oh, really? You're never going to be a pastor. Let's just see about that. Yeah. And I'll never forget when Dennis Colburn, after a Harvest House service that I preached, he said, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? We went to his car and sat down, and he says, would you consider, being pastor? And before I even knew what came out of my mouth, I said yes. And I thought, so what did I just say? And, it had to be God, because God opened up all the doors to allow me to be the pastor there. But I'm loving it. I'm loving being a pastor. I love going on visitation and meeting and greeting people and ministering to people. And I always felt like my gifting and my calling was teaching and preaching. I feel so much in my element when I'm doing that. And when I'm writing Bible lessons and commentaries and books, I'm just in the zone. I'm doing what God has called me to do. I feel fulfilled. I feel happy when I'm doing that. So it's like things have come full circle. I started out in a Free Will Baptist church, was born and raised, went to a Bible college, then for 20-some years was into Messianic Judaism, and I still consider myself a Messianic Jew because I'm Jewish and I believe in Jesus the Messiah. Mm-hmm. I still keep a lot of culture and customs and traditions. I'm wearing a kippah, right? I'm wearing tzitzit. I'm wearing fringes. So, I'm still Jewish. But I have never given up my belief or faith that Jesus is the Messiah. Right. And so, it's kind of come full circle here. A Messianic rabbi is now pastoring a United Baptist church down the road. Amen. That's God. Yeah. You can't make that stuff up. No. Amen. So that's just kind of my life and my testimony in a nutshell and in a snapshot. I know it's unorthodox. I know it's not traditional. But the Lord is pretty amazing. what he has kept me from, what he has led me to, and what he has led me through. And I don't know. I just really hope that somebody may have been touched or blessed or encouraged or inspired by this testimony, as weird as it may have been.
AbrahamsDescendants.com, getting back to the first century in a 21st century way. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to press the like button as well as the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and the notification bell that'll let you know every time I make a new video. And don't forget to share this with a friend. Also, visit our website at AbrahamsDescendants.com. Thanks. Shalom.